Okay, very good. So you have come back to the middle of Orchot Tzaddikim, the ways of the paths of the righteous. And we're up to page Ein Vav, the section on Simcha. We're on the first long paragraph, the first paragraph of the page. V'chen ha'adam asher kol chiyuso utzrochav tluyim ba'adam echad. We started this section, but I don't believe we finished it. Lo yasim bitchono belibo al adamahu. Remember, this is a discussion about somebody whose source of sustenance is basically dependent on one person. He should be very careful not to put his trust entirely on this person, too fully on this person, but rather put his trust in Hashem and view this person as a worthy emissary for God's will. Ach yosim shoresh bitchono miomek alev, but the source of his trust, to the depth of his heart, should be b'boris barach, in the Creator may he be blessed. Vein dai ma she'omer ken belibo. It's not enough just that he say that in his heart. El yiten shevach v'hoido le'boris barach al zeh. Asher lo zav chazdo mito. He should rather praise and thank God for this explicitly, and say, thank you that he has not withheld your kindness from me. Here's a nice allegory, a nice analogy to understand this matter. 100 blind people going one after the other. Each one puts his hand on the shoulder of the one before him. At the head of the whole line is the person who can see. He guides all the others behind him. Each one knows, even though each one knows he puts his hand on the one in front of him, and it's through the person in front of him that he's being led, the leadership is not coming through the person whose shoulder his hand is upon. Why? Because that person is himself blind. They're all drawn after the first one who can see. If the first one dissociates himself from the chain, what's going to happen? The others will just lose totally orientation. This is a person who put the heart. God is the leader. He's the cause of all causes, the mover of all moves. And therefore, everything that happens anything that happens through agents. And the agents are themselves blind to the prime mover. God guides everything and sends the agents in the appropriate direction. People are agents without even knowing. And therefore we have to be aware of this. I mean, there is the factor that I mentioned yesterday, which should not be overlooked. The analogy perhaps is limited, is that the agent is very often making a free will decision to do something good. And it could be because of their decision to do something good that they are chosen to be the receptacle or the venue through which the good is expressed. And so it's slightly different here than the analogy, because the blind person has no quality whatsoever, no ability to see. But here, an agent can make the right decision to help a person who's needy. The recipient should be grateful to the one who's making that free will decision to help, but ultimately recognize his having the ability to help is coming not from him, but rather from God. So that would be the difference. He says, we're all like blind people. Each one of us is helped through the agents of others. But nobody could do anything if it weren't for God. And therefore, we are not allowed to question why certain things happen or don't happen, for good or for bad, because it all comes from Hashem. Just like one hamisparnes, who is being sustained, should be thinking only of Hashem. Again, we have to qualify that. I mean, what he means to say is, as explained earlier, he's recognizing that everything only comes from Hashem, right? Even though he might have gratitude to this person for choosing to be the agent, but he recognizes that everything comes from Hashem. So too, ken mefarnes lo yizgaye shel mefarnes, the one who's sustaining, the one who's giving. So he should also not be haughty over his ability to give. So the recipient says, thank you very much. I really appreciate your help. It's very kind of you. And the person says, yeah, you're right. Where would you be without me? That would be wrong. What he should say is, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity of enabling me to give. And thank Hashem, right, for seeing me worthy in order to be able to give. That would be the proper response. That should be the proper response. And it's not easy. It's not easy. Very often you might be in a situation where you're davening, there's a shul, people come in asking for charity, alms and so forth and so on. Perhaps they shouldn't do that. Perhaps it disturbs the prayer. Perhaps. But it's something that's done. And very likely the justification for this is that we're standing like beggars asking from Hashem for our various needs to be fulfilled. So wouldn't it be appropriate at the same time that we act with others the way in which we are hoping that God will act with us? And namely, therefore, people are allowed to come in and ask for money from us as we are asking from Hashem. And it occurred to me that sometimes a person, sometimes a person might find that he's in the middle of the davening, and all of a sudden some, for lack of a better word, beggar comes, knocking into him, disturbing his prayers. So what's our first reaction? We're all indignant. How can he do such a thing? Doesn't he see me in the middle of my prayer? But if we were to stop for a minute and think, what was I just thinking before he did that? Very often we'll find that we weren't even thinking about God, we weren't even thinking about prayer, we were thinking about the vacation we want to take in Honolulu. And here we get all indignant about this person who's interrupting. So Hashem sends the beggar to remind us what it means to ask. Because this person who's asking you for money, he's not thinking about his vacation in Honolulu. He's thinking about having enough bread to buy, put on his table to feed his children. Yeah? But here we sit self-snugly with the ability to think about all types of different things in the middle of the prayer. Hashem says, learn from a beggar what it is to ask, wholeheartedly, singly. Thank him for interrupting you because you were in Honolulu instead of praying. Thank him for the interruption. Yeah? And therefore we should find different opportunities to thank the people who ask from us, because it gives us an opportunity to kind of put our priorities straight. I'm certainly not happy with anybody's misfortune, but thank God I'm not begging. That's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider is that Chazal say, the Gemara says that more than the balabas, meaning the giver, gives to the oni, the recipient gives to the balabas, because the poor person creates the opportunity for me to give. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have the opportunity to give. So we should actually view charity not as something good that we're doing for someone else, but actually a good that we're receiving from the recipient. So that the recipient is really the giver, and the giver is really the recipient. And these are ideas that a person should try and keep in mind when he is dispensing charity. I'm not going into the whole question about how much you should give, to who and to when and all of that. I'm just saying, given a scenario where it's appropriate to give, rather than kind of lording this over the person in whatever way that might be. And you see this sometimes in shul. A poor person comes walking by and he doesn't notice that you want to give. So somebody will take the coin, knock it on the table. Like, here, dog, come, take your bone. At least that's how it seems to me. I don't like that. If you want to give, so then get up and give. Because he's asking for the money, he has to come to you, but he's providing for you the mitzvah. So shouldn't you go to get the mitzvah? Right? You wouldn't go like this to your tefillin. Yeah? You would go to take your tefillin, right? And if there's something else, right, that you wanted, you wouldn't whistle at it like that, like a dog, like an animal. Come. So a human being is asking for money. Anyway, it's a degrading situation for many people to be in. So if your approach to giving is one that you're actually receiving, you're receiving the opportunity to give, so then you should make the effort to get up and give the money to the person. Just because he's collecting, right? So he has to I don't know how common that is in America, but here it's very common. It seems to me, unless it's like a cultural thing, that it's really not particularly respectful to whistle at the guy in order to call his attention to come over and give him the money. You want to give him the money, so go to him. Yeah.
How does that reflect on us praying to God in the same reverence for the person who's humbling themselves?
So the person should certainly humble himself before Hashem. For sure. The person who's giving, the person who's asking, making the request, should also ask humbly, right? And not in a crude and mean manner. But even if he is, that's not a reason why we shouldn't give. Again, assuming it's related to the scenario before. There's sometimes, this person comes and he interrupts my prayer. Then he acts coarse and rough, knocks into my shoulder. Doesn't you see him in the middle of the prayer? You get indignant and angry at the person. Look at the way he's dressed. He might not even smell particularly pleasant. What's this business here? I'm trying to concentrate. But we should also think that that in perhaps in a spiritual sense is how we appear in front of Hashem: torn shoes, dirty clothing, soiled garments. Spiritually speaking, I mean. So we stand there, clamoring away rudely, in a way which perhaps we're not deserving of, coming improperly, spiritually attired in front of Hashem, and there might be a malodorous sense wafting spiritually, from our aura, and nevertheless we have the audacity to stand like that in the spiritually inferior state and ask from Hashem. So I should get angry at him when I'm doing the same thing in front of Hashem. Tone things down. Humble yourself. Recognize who you are. Give when you have an opportunity to give. Be thankful when you receive. Yeah. The Gemara also makes note of the verse in the Torah which talks about the Jewish people contributing to the Beis Hamikdash. It says "V'notenu." V'notenu, the Chazal note, is spelled the same way backwards and forwards. There's a word for that, right, in English grammatically? But Vav, Nun, Taf, Nun, Vav is spelled the same way backwards and forwards, implying the reciprocity of giving and actually receiving. It goes both ways. In any case, to finish off this paragraph, about 3/4 of the way down, to be thankful to Hashem. Kach mefarnes, lo yizgaye shehu mefarnes, at the beginning of the line, mefarnes. He should also not be haughty in his ability to give, but rather he should be humbly thankful to Hashem that he's able to give and not ask. Right? Because such a person is also like the blind who's being led by the first cause. Shuhu arei, the one who sees. Regarding this it says, V'holachti ivrim bederech lo yeda'o, Benesivois lo yedu adrichem, asim machshoch lifnehem leor uma'akoshim limishor. A beautiful pasuk in Isaiah, which says, "V'holachti ivrim b'derech." I'll cause the blind to be led across in the way that they don't know, which otherwise they can't see. Benesivois lo yedu adrichem, and in pathways which they don't know and recognize, I will guide them through. Asim machshoch lifnechem leor, and I'll make dark places like light before them. Uma'akoshim lemishor, and difficult paths, steep paths, I will level out for them. So Hashem does all of this for us. V'omer, and it says, V'ivrim hebitu lirois, the blind were able to see. V'omer mi'iver ki'im avdi v'cheresh ke'malochi yishlach mi'iver ke'meshulam v'iver ke'eved Hashem. V'hine kol advarim shebotchim bo HaKadosh Baruch Hu hem shmonei chalakim. There are 8 different ways in which we can express our trust in God. So there's going to be a list of 8 things here. Maybe we'll try and go through it a little more quickly. There are 8 ways in which trust in God is expressed. The first is The first involves the body of a person. Hasheni inyan parnaso, his livelihood. Shlishi inyan ishto, his wife. Haravivi hoves ulavovois ve'evorim shehu misyached beto'altam unizkam. The fourth one is the responsibilities of the heart and of the body regarding their benefits or possible harms. The fifth one, the fifth one is regarding matters that have an effect on other people. Hashishi, gmul olam hazeh, reward in this world. Hashvi, the seventh one, gvul olam haba utzafon tzaddikim, reward in the world to come. And Shmini, the eighth one, is gmul olam haba utzafon tzaddikim. You see, there's a little bit of confusion here regarding the actual version. We generally read the text that's in square brackets and not the round parentheses, right? So the way it would go is that the seventh one is talking about the reward in the world to come, the world of Mashiach, and the eighth one is talking about the world to come for the Tzaddikim. Okay? He's going to elaborate on each of these 8 points. Yeah. Yes, that's the thing here. There are different versions here. So according to this version, I'm reading the text which has been squared and put in brackets as opposed to parentheses. Al-Bitochon Rishon, the first one, Be'inyan Guf Adam, regarding the body of a person. Hu sheyashlich nafsho v'gimtzo ratzmo el rachamav gedolim v'yeda she'en lo eitzav en hogo ele b'reshuso gzirasor. A person should throw himself entirely, his bodily, into having faith and trust in Hashem. And all of his health and all of his days are all connected to the decree of God. He's saying a point that we addressed last week. And he says explicitly here what Dimitri seemed to favor strongly, which is that even though everything in our physical form is dependent on God, we still have to make every reasonable effort to attain our physical needs, including remedies. And he says the remedies and the doctors also come from Hashem. And he should not rely on God alone to provide for all of his needs. So this is really what we spoke about 2 days ago or so. I don't think there's any need to elaborate. Right? You have to have trust in God, meaning realize that everything comes from God. But most of us are on a level where it comes directly, miraculously from God, like the Jews received the man in the desert. Rather, it has to come through effort. We have to make that effort, recognizing that the effort, the ability to make the effort, and the result from the effort all come from Hashem. Not to be like that person who drowned, right? Claiming, God, why didn't you save me? He said, I tried 3 times and you didn't listen. Person should not say, Hoyel veni kosher b'gzeras aboisbach, since I'm totally dependent on the decree of God. Elech b'darkei hasakana. Ve'shetei salamavis, I'll be responsible. I'll do dangerous things. Halometzinu b'shmuel b'amro echelech u'shama shul v'hargani. How can I go and King Saul will hear and he'll kill me? So he's concerned here about natural causes. Why should that be? If he believes that everything's from Hashem, so do what you want and everything will be okay. No, that's not true. You cannot rely on this type of trust to walk in the middle of I-95 thinking you're going to be able to cross the other side. It doesn't work that way. You might be held accountable by God for your life, for taking your life like that so irresponsibly. Even though this is the approach a person should take, he should not view this as an expression of having a lack of faith. It's 2 different things. HaKadosh Baruch Hu heshiv lo, Eglas bakar tikach biyodecho v'amarta lizvoch laHashem basi. God did not criticize him for thinking this way. What he said to him is, take an animal and in your hand and tell him that I came to sacrifice for Hashem. But the point is that aside from having being directed explicitly from God to do so, he shouldn't have been expected to do so, and he wasn't held accountable for not doing so. Regarding somebody who puts himself into a state of danger, Omer, it says, Ani batuach b'Hashem yisbarach, and I have faith in Hashem. Regarding such a person, it says, Ksil misaver uvateach. Yeah, the fool will pass and have trust. It's relevant to us. How can we be here? How can we be in Israel? How can people come now when things are heated up like this? How can we stay and say everything will be okay? God protects us. Where are we going to go? France? Yeah, Paris will be better? I'm not sure. Yeah, I've been attacked in New York City. I've been harassed in London. I've been Hail Hitlered in Miami.
Maybe it's just you.
Or maybe I'm a Jew. Yeah, the problem is I look too Jewish, I suppose.
Some of my friends who knew me for like 10 years as a kid, I found out I was Jewish. I tell them with pride, they don't want to talk to me. Oh, a Jew?
Yeah.
I knew them since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
It's just being a Jew. It's
Yeah.
insane.
But getting back to the more core issue here of exposing oneself to danger, being
right.
what's that?
It's not just exposing yourself to danger, but exposing yourself to danger deliberately, knowing that it's dangerous.
Yeah, okay, that's what I mean by exposing yourself to danger. Yeah. You know.
Not like you're in the army and you're exposing yourself to danger. Like
Making the willing decision to expose yourself. I mean, here, thank God in Yerushalayim the situation is a bit different, but it can happen here. It has, and the question is theoretically just as relevant here as anywhere else in Israel. How can a Jew be in Israel? He could be elsewhere. I'm not sure that in elsewhere it's that much better. I mean, of course it is in certain ways, but I don't really have a good answer to this question. Other than the fact that God did command the Jewish people to be in the land of Israel when it's possible. And it is possible. There's nothing immediately life-threatening here for most people, and that's probably the difference. That here we're talking about something which is immediately life-threatening. A person's not allowed to put himself into something which is immediately life-threatening and say, "I'll get out of this alive. Everything will be okay. I'll trust in God." That's the first thing. The second thing is not only is it not immediately life-threatening, there is something that can be done here to neutralize the danger, and that's being done. So I suppose if it's not immediately life-threatening and something can and is being done to neutralize the danger, then it's permitted. It's permitted, particularly when you're talking about a Jew living in the land of Israel, when his intention is that should be able to enable him to live in a much more Jewish way than he would be able to do elsewhere. Hashem Yazor. V'haTorah hizhirtanu alzeh. The Torah warned us about this. Because it says, "Lo tenasu es Hashem Elokechem." Don't try God. Don't try God. Don't put yourself in a situation. V'machnis atzmo lidei sakana. Somebody puts himself in a situation of danger and kills himself, meaning he kills, he's therefore responsible for taking his life. His punishment is even worse than if he were to kill others. Wow, I don't know where that comes from. A person who intentionally takes his life, puts himself into danger, and therefore that's tantamount to taking his own life, that's worse than taking the life of others. That I don't know what the source for that would be.
It's not the same as somebody who commits suicide. This is somebody that does something foolish that ends up endangering their own life and actually loses their life.
So, that's the point. In other words, since it's careless, it's worse than murdering someone?
Yeah, and that's what it seems to say. In my translation, it says, kills himself through his folly.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's not just about you took your own life, because I could be talking about suicide, but it's not talking
Yeah. I didn't think it was about suicide. I understand that we're talking about a person who puts himself into a state of danger. What you're adding here is the explicit mention of the word foolish, but that's the whole point. He's irresponsibly putting himself in danger, and as a result of that, that's tantamount to taking his own life, meaning he's causing his death, not suicide. He's causing his own death. Causing his own death is worse than causing somebody else's death. I'm not sure why, unless you add. Now, That being said, a person is allowed to threaten his life, endanger his life, to save someone else. A person is allowed to do that. And, the question is discussed in the Gemara and also in Tosfos, whether a person is allowed to basically sacrifice his own life for another. Can a mother put herself in between danger and her child, such that she dies and the child lives? And there's discussion about this. Tosfos' position seems to be the one I remember. I haven't looked this up in a long time. In halacha, is that a person is allowed to sacrifice his life to save someone else's life, and that person is not liable for having taken his life, not guilty for having done so. And there's another discussion about whether a person is allowed to give up his life for mitzvahs that he's not required to do. There are 3 mitzvahs that a person is required to give up his life for and not transgress them, right? Murder, idolatry, sexual immorality. For example, if a person threatens a Jew and says, either you have this forbidden sexual relationship, or you kill that person, or you commit idolatry, or you die, so what are you required to do? No, kill that person. You're required to kill that person. If you can't kill that person, then you're required to give up your life and not transgress. That's an important point that people forget. You're required to kill that person.
To try.
Yes, you're required to kill them. If you can't, you can't. Yeah, it would probably be better to die in trying to kill that person than to die because you don't do the transgression. Either way, you're not going to transgress. Probably better to die trying to take him out. If you can, you can. If you can't, you would have died anyway. Yeah. So the question is, what about mitzvahs where you're not required to give up your life? It's a situation where, and there are some situations where a Jew is required to give up his life if necessary for any of the mitzvahs. When you're talking about a decree against Judaism and the Torah, which is applicable to the entire people. But in a situation where that's not the case, and a Jew says, and a Jew's threatened, transgress Shabbos or you die. So you're allowed to transgress Shabbos and not required to forfeit your life. Is a Jew allowed to nevertheless forfeit his life and not transgress? On the one hand, he's not required to give up his life. So doing so where he's not required is tantamount to subjecting himself to being killed when he shouldn't have, so he's kind of taking his own life. On the other hand, he's doing it for the glory of God. And we're not talking about a situation where there would be a desecration of Hashem's name, right? So he would be allowed to transgress. So I believe here that there's a machlokes, Rambam and Tosfos, about whether he's allowed to do that. And I believe that the Tosfos' opinion is that a person is allowed to give up his life. He's not required to. The 3 sins a person is required to. The other situations, he's not required to, but he's allowed to if he so chooses, yeah.
I guess under the 3 sins you're required to, idolatry, I heard a scenario where a person was forced to either worship an idol or give up his own life.
Yeah.
If there's no sincerity, emunah, anything besides even blind words, when someone's like, say these words of worship
Yes.
to this idol, and you just say them outwardly but don't believe them,
Yeah.
is that even still, you're basically committing that?
You're not allowed to do that. However, the Gemara does discuss that the flip side of what I was just saying, which is that where he's required to give up his life and he doesn't, he's not liable for the death penalty for doing what he does, even though these are transgressions where one would be liable for the death penalty. Number one, because it's under duress. And number 2, well, I guess that's basically it. He's under duress. He didn't want to do it. He only did it because he was forced to do it. And therefore, even though those situations are situations where a person could be liable for the death penalty, if those criteria existed, he would nevertheless be exempt from the death penalty because he didn't do it of his own volition. He did it under duress. Yeah. So a person is required to give up his life, and he's not allowed to bow down saying, I do not enjoy what I'm doing. Yeah, he's not allowed to do that. That's not an option. He is required to give up his life, and he is not allowed to bow down even if it's without any intention. However, if he nevertheless did transgress and made an outward show of idolatrous worship, and that certainly wasn't his intention, he wouldn't be liable for transgressing idolatry. Yeah.
is like say forced conversion, like they did in the Crusades, a form of idolatry? I heard that there was basically Islamists or Muslims doing forced conversions, and since they're not like the Christians or the Catholics, there's no idol involved. Would that fall under the same like unforgivable sin?
A person is not allowed to. Yes, that's first of all, it's a chilul Hashem, it's a desecration of God's name, and it's a denial of God and the Torah and Moshe and the mitzvahs. And a person is not allowed, even under threat of death, to do that. One is liable for the death penalty for that type of a thing, really. And there was a whole discussion about what were you going to say?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think you're making a distinction between the time in history when there were a lot of forced conversions to Islam.
Yeah,
by
even
Jews. And I remember reading something about, I think Maimonides has said something that since a lot of the principles of faith are similar, and there's not, there's no graven images and things like that, that although it was obviously not ideal, and a lot of these people kind of did on the surface and, inwardly or at home kept Jewish traditions and customs, that it was okay considering the situation. And that was a distinction that was drawn
between Islam and Christianity,
or any other kind of form of what would be a little bit more visibly idol worship. I think that was a distinction, because there were many Jews who lived as Muslims essentially, until they were able to kind of go back.
So but I don't think the Rambam was saying that it's permitted to do that, but rather a person who did that would not be culpable.
Would they be like a mamzer in their mitzvah after that? Like their life, it might as well have been forgiven or given up, but like their kids and their family after that, like... No. First of all, it has nothing to do with mamzerus. Well,
as long as they're keeping the mitzvahs of the Torah. If they're, outwardly presenting themselves as, believing and observant Muslims, but are, really believing and practicing Jews, so that would not... ultimately, undermine their belief and their Jewish belief and practice, but it would be wrong to do that. Islam is Islam. It's a different religion. It's true that it's not idolatrous, but it's still it's a chilul Hashem. A person is required to give up his life and not transgress chilul Hashem. Chilul Hashem is a public desecration of God's name. A Jew should be willing to give up his faith in order to convert out to any religion, even if it's a monotheistic religion with beliefs which are similar to that of Judaism. It's still a chilul Hashem. If he did so, he would not be liable for having done so. He wouldn't be liable for idolatry. Yeah.
But I think the question, I think the question Maimonides was answering this response was, as a community, should we do this or should we, face a
Right.
And his answer was, do it.
Yeah.
Convert and keep whatever you can.
Yeah.
But it's not I don't know if he said it's not a desecration of God's name per se, but he did say it. It's not one of these three events.
I'm only generally familiar with that, but not enough to really say. I think it's in Igeres Teman, if I'm not mistaken. The Rambam's Igeres Teman, but I'm not familiar enough to really say. No, not the Moranos. No, it's something else. Yeah.
Rabbi, see in the Spanish Inquisition, when the Jews in Spain and Portugal were forced to turn to Catholicism.
They weren't forced to turn to Catholicism.
Or Christianity, whatever they were.
They were not forced.
They done it willingly, yeah?
What?
They done it willingly.
That was the problem. They were given the option to leave. They were told, if you want to stay, you have to convert.
So are them people's souls cut off now?
Pardon me?
Are the people that done that, are their souls cut off in the next world?
So there's a whole, discussion about, what happened to these people called the Anusim. They were like forced conversions. I mean, it wasn't entirely forced, like I said, because they were given the option to leave. However, if, given the prospects of being able to continue to live after leaving, it could also be ultimately, kind of like under duress. So there was they could have left, and many did. Many stayed. And they preferred to stay and have an outward show of conversion to Catholicism and remain private Jews. So ultimately, these people, many of these people, made their way to the land of Israel and settled in the main city of Jewish residents at that time, which was Tzfas, and the major leaders of Tzfas at that time had to discuss what to do with these people. Should they be included as regular Jews into the community, or should they be ostracized? And there was a lot of discussion back and forth. One of the major ideas is that they're liable kares, spiritually cutting off, but that could be transposed through lashing. And there's a suggestion, therefore, that they should subject themselves to a form of lashing and repent for this, and then be accepted back into the community. So these situations are not easy at all. The challenge itself is very difficult. I don't know how much. It's very, very difficult. It's hard to judge a person until you're in his place, and what we would do in that situation, God forbid we should be in it. What we should do, I don't know. But technically speaking, right, a person is required to give up his life in order to uphold his public commitment to the faith and practice of Judaism. Yeah.